From Koreatown, Los Angeles, thank you for tuning into KTown Social Club. This is where the world gathers to talk about the issues that you really care about. It's a different kind of a talk program. We're the only show you'll find that offers perspectives from the far left to the far right. And today we are joined by the founder and head instructor at the ABCs of Attraction, the Asian Playboy. Give it up for JT Tran.
Thank you. Asian Playboy for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So today we're gathering 5 Asian Playboys and the Master Asian Playboy, and we're gonna learn a bit about what is pickup artists and the pickup artist thing, and how Asian Americans can
Or
Asian men I guess date more. Like it seems a lot of Asian guys have some trouble with dating, I guess.
Yeah. I think
That's sad.
Interracial dating is basically like on the rise. You have like 54% of American-born Asian women that outmarry, and only like something on the order of like 20% of Asian American men that outmarry. So there is a discrepancy. So my entire shtick, if you will, is to encourage Asian guys to open their dating options to all women: Black, white, Latina, as well as Asian women.
So you're not one of those like angry guys that say, oh, these Asian women are sellouts. You're more like, hey, well, let's also marry or date other races.
I mean, probably like a lot of young Asian men when I was in college, I saw like all the Hollywood sort of stereotypes and what was out there. And yeah, I might have been like a young, angry Asian guy, but over time I realized, you know what? The only person I should worry about is myself and what makes me happy. And that's what I try to, instill into my students. Like, whoever you want to date, just be open to dating all types so that you can find whatever, value of happiness, whether that's a relationship, a lot of, sex, intimacy, whatever it is that you're looking for, optimize your chances for that.
When would you say you, realized this, or what age range, you did this for yourself, and then how did you, get the idea to turn into a business?
Well, it was completely by accident, right? When I kissed my first girl in college at the age of 20, which is the average in Asian American men, according to certain studies, right? We're very much late bloomers.
What's the overall American average?
Like 16.
Okay.
So Asian American women.
And this is just for kissing, not.
Like dating.
Oh,
but
wow.
Asian American women, according to certain
first
studies, say
it's much
19.
lower.
So like Asian women actually date earlier than Asian
19.
men. Yeah.
Well,
So-
Asian women date earlier than Asian men.
By a
Yeah.
year. That's not that much.
That's not that much of a difference.
But we're the only ethnicity where women outperform the men.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so-
not good.
And so like after college, at first I thought I was like the big man on campus, I had a girlfriend and all of that. So graduated college, moved out to LA, tried my hand at dating, and realized I was a spectacular failure. Like I tried eHarmony, and this is back in the day, I'm dating myself now, right? Where you had to take a personality test, right? And you had to pay for membership, and I did that, and they said like, hey, you know what? You're too analytical, we can't find you a match, so we're gonna give you a refund. So I was
Wait,
like,
they actually gave you a
yeah,
refund?
it's like you're too analytical. It's not gonna work. So then I kind of explored like.
What year was that?
Oh,
Early 2000s?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
back in
right,
the day,
right.
when online dating was like really new.
That's still going on. eHarmony.
That's just like
That's-
code.
I'm not saying
why.
You're
Yeah.
too Asian.
You're Asian.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then I started exploring other ways. Like I tried, speed dating, tried to do like intramural sports. Wasn't lucking out, and then I fell into like the pickup community, and I started, practicing that, which is just a like confidence in applied psychology. Created the Asian Playboy blog, wrote my adventures and misadventures.
What year was that when you created the blog?
2005, I guess. It's been a while,
Yeah.
right?
You think you were the first one to do that kind of thing back in the day?
For
Yeah.
Asian
men?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what really started it, and I grew a following, a lot of readership, until one day a Chinese Canadian mother called me up to help out her teenage son who had been harassed by neo-Nazis. And she said like, hey, he's not going out, he's not making friends anymore, could I fly you out, put you up in a hotel?
What part of Canada was that?
Toronto.
Okay.
And then she's like, and I'll pay you $100 a day. I'm like, I can get paid to do this?
Oh, that was
Okay.
What year was that?
I was gonna do it for
That was
free.
that was kind of like your first job,
Yeah,
right?
it's probably like as dating coaching.
Yeah.
It's probably like 2006, 7,
Oh wow.
a while ago, right?
Yeah.
And I told her like, man, for 3 days and 3 nights, I'll be the big brother he never had.
Yeah.
So, that's how I came up with ABCs of Attraction, which was, I call it a holistic system where it's kind of, the idea is to be well-rounded, but to have actual kind of practical techniques that would allow this young teenager to actually grow and not simply be a quote unquote like robotic pickup artist, but still give them actual actionable tools to be successful. And last I'd heard, he went off to college to become a doctor and was, living with a girlfriend.
So so describe that experience. What was that like that first time kind of like going to Toronto and meeting this guy? Like what do you think his issues were, and how did you like get him to overcome them? Or
Well, like the biggest thing obviously was that he had been harassed by neo-Nazis.
Sure.
So there was definitely like a fear of like white men. If I go up to a girl, I'm gonna get beat up by white guys, right? So obviously one of the things I do is like I would demonstrate how to approach and not be concerned about the opinions or the fear of violence from
Yeah.
other guys. Because when you understand sort of like the social marketplace and how people operate, like bars, clubs, is there to socialize. Very rarely are people actually, try to instigate something. It can happen, obviously, but if you have, social intelligence and are able to like maneuver in a group and befriend the group, it's nothing to fear.
Yeah.
So the ability to show like, hey, I'm a short dude. Like I know what I look like. I'm 5'5". I'm not a big, intimidating guy. A lot of women. I am not their,
6'5", trust fund, blue eyes.
Exactly, right? I am not their, archetype for a romantic male. So the ability to show like, hey, 1, don't be afraid of other guys. 2, don't be afraid of girls. 3, talking to girls is fun. Flirting with girls is one of the most rewarding things. It's one of the most enjoyable pursuits of life. And so the ability to show that, I think, really instilled in him that like, hey, despite whatever kind of trauma he experienced in high school, it isn't something that has to like hold him back to pursuing, the relationships that he wants.
Yeah.
It must have been nervous for you because that was like your first, right, to get
Trial.
paid. and
It
all
was,
that,
but I
right?
did the Asian thing, which is I did my homework,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
Like when I invented the ABCs of Attraction, it's like it's simply a sine wave,
So
right?
you are too analytical. No,
Yeah,
just kidding.
exactly. I was like, I totally Asianed it, right? So like, this inner game, outer game, verbal game. So, the idea was like, I want to give this teenage kid who's like 18, like training wheel, but enough room to grow. So I developed that and I practiced it. And then when I taught it to him and then, go out what we call like in field to actually meet real life people, it all clicked. And then I just started gaining a following because I was really the first Asian guy doing this, but not in a sort of anonymous manner, but actually putting myself out there.
Okay, so
Right.
you had your picked photo and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
Okay.
So you think any Asian guy, regardless of looks or economic background, can be a successful pickup artist?
I mean, I don't think everybody needs to be a pickup artist. To be quite frank, I would say like the vast majority of my agent clientele want some sort of relationship. They're just really tired of either, falling into it by accident or by luck or not having their quality of choice. Very few Asian guys want to become like quote unquote pickup artists. There are a few, sure, and God bless them and
Like
everything
Playboy,
like that.
right?
Yeah, there are a few that want that. But the vast majority of Asian men, unlike other in the manosphere, like white guys and so forth, like Asian guys want a quality girlfriend or like to be able to date around and then decide on their quality girlfriend. Like I still to this day remain the only dating coach that's ever officiated his own student's wedding. Like no other dating coach has ever done that, right? Like he met her at the first club that ever brought him to. And so when he got married to her, like I was there to officiate. And then last year I went to his 10th anniversary where, I get to hang out with his 2 kids. I'm like their little god uncle. So it's rewarding,
Right. So not every Asian guy wants to be a pickup artist, but every Asian guy, regardless of how he looks or his economic background, he could find a fulfilling, happy relationship.
Absolutely. I've had students that had like physical disabilities from dwarfism, stuttering, even mental like schizophrenia. Now, obviously there are, some students who are going to be on the far extreme where it's going to be incredibly difficult, not going to lie. And then some students that have all the genetic gifts. And they even those guys have a difficult time, not because they're like 6 foot tall, wealthy and good looking, but mentally and emotionally they're a little bit stunted. This is what I find different between international Asians and American born Asians. International Asians, you know, they're the apex male back in the motherland.
Yeah.
They're used to getting girls. They come over here and they don't understand why American girls don't like them. You just have to teach them American dating culture. A lot of American born Asians, they grew up with internalized racism. And even if they're tall and good looking, they don't believe they deserve it. And so that deconstruction of their internalized racism and, you know, fighting against that takes a lot longer than simply taking someone and giving them a good hairstyle, giving them good fashion, and giving them a line. Like, that's easy. But the guys that really have internalized racism growing up, that's the hardest part of my job.
So then what do you do to break that down?
We have like drills, certain drills, like during our boot camp program. We do like live training. I am a huge proponent of live training because I know like Asians, very technically inclined, want to watch the videos, read the ebooks, but nothing substitutes live training where you're actually there on the spot, talking to real people, getting live feedback.
Asians
Right.
don't like that, right?
They don't, unfortunately. But also it is part of my job as a coach to be able to show like, hey, like if I can do it, like a 5'5", very average at best, and for a very long period of time, like overweight Asian guy can successfully approach, talk to, you know, attract, date, you know, girls of all races, then you should be able to. So it's sort of like, you know, if they can actually see it, then it kind of breaks that limiting belief in their mind.
Yeah, you know, I had a friend, he was a good-looking Asian dude, born and raised here. He was the type of guy that was so good-looking, he could go to the KTown bars where they hired pretty women to serve the drinks and all that. These girls would actually be like, hey, what's your number? They would want to meet up and hook up with him. But he was so down on himself, he would never like date them because he felt like, wait, why do they like me? I don't understand. And anyway, he's no longer with us. He decided to leave this world.
Oh, man.
But
I'm sorry.
I feel like he could have really benefited from that kind of live training. But then at the same time, there's also other Asian guys, or just men in general, but they don't have the genetic gifts, but they believe they're entitled to, you know, the most beautiful and amazing women.
Yeah.
Because of money?
Maybe they're kind of like delusional, maybe. So do you have those kinds of students as well?
Sure. I mean, to your first part, my condolences to your friend. I think the statistic is like Asian American teenage boys have one of the highest suicide rates, whether it's whether it's because of racism, studies, dating, unfulfillment, whatever. So I've definitely encountered that. I've definitely had students that suffer from deep depression, and I'm not a therapist, right? I'm a skills educator and a coach. And if you need a psychologist, a therapist, by all means, go to that. But definitely, like, this is one of the things with self-improvement, self-development. It definitely helps when you have the confidence in yourself, but also to get the validation from the external world. What you're talking about in the second part is this internal delusion that isn't matched by external reality, right? So it's a fantasy, right? Where, he believes so highly of himself, but the external reality of how people actually treat him doesn't match what he believes. From what it sounds like, those type of students are what I would call high expectations but low resilience, where they expect a lot, but they themselves aren't willing to put in the hard work to be successful, to do the grind, to work hard and experience the emotional pain. Like, I remember one time I had a military student. He also did PMC work. First he did tours in Afghanistan, then he was a private military contractor for a while, and this was in DC. I was doing a boot camp. And he literally looks at me, he's like, after the first night, right? JT, man, I'd rather get shot at again in Afghanistan than get rejected by a girl. I'm like, what are you talking about? Getting shot at is so much worse, right?
But that's how devastating it is.
Yeah, but it's emotional. I'm not saying that emotion isn't valid. Of course it is. But it isn't like a physical reality. But if you lay in bed, it's the idea of neuroplasticity, right? If you lay in bed and you just fantasize or catastrophize how many times you get rejected, you could do that 100 times, and your brain doesn't know the difference from reality, right? Like, if you go out to a bar tonight, you're like, okay, maybe you talk to like 4 or 5 girls, and maybe 4 or 5 girls reject you. That sucks. But if you lay in bed and catastrophize, and you do that to yourself for 100 times, then it becomes that, internalized belief where you think to yourself, I will never be successful. And that is that gilded cage that is so hard to deconstruct when you have a belief, right, that can't simply be turned off, right? That takes years to deconstruct.
So there's a lot of guys like that, paralyzed pretty much.
Yeah, societal conditioning. Like I've had guys where like I had to demonstrate approach girls, bring the girls to him to talk, and he just would literally and he was tall, like dog looking, average looking, but like a tall doctor, and literally he just started crying in the middle of the club, just tears running down his face.
Okay.
But
that's traumatized.
yeah, but I was the one actually approaching the girls and bringing the girls to talk to him. But he could not force himself to take the first step to walk, right?
And he had those traumatic events back in the day. That's why he rejected a lot.
I mean, for whatever reason, there are a lot of things that feed into that. I had a student, it was a London boot camp, and he was like a vice president of one of like the Fortune 500 companies. Like career-wise, very successful, extremely successful. But, the second night he was like, man, you know what, JT, maybe I'm just destined to be dateless and I shouldn't date ever again. I'm like, no, man, like, let's talk about your background. Like, what is your reason why you're here? And it turned out that he had been abused by his family, not sexual abuse, but like emotional abuse. And he was considered like the stupid one because he didn't make the straight A's like his brother and sister. And so he became super successful in his professional life in order to sort of get some sort of power. But he lacked the personal power in his relationships. I said, that's why you're here, to get your power back in your personal relationships because you felt so powerless growing up.
So what happened to him? Did he get better while taking more lessons? The one that you just talked about?
Well, I hope so. It's like we kept in touch for a while and then, it kind of drops off. And the thing is, as a coach, is I am responsible to my students, but I'm not responsible for them. I deliver product, I deliver service. These are the products that you get. These, the times and the hours. This is what I deliver. But ultimately, every individual man has to be responsible for himself. This is the idea of, if you give a man a fish, you only feed him for a day, but you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But he still has to go out there and fish, right? I can teach him how to fish, but if he doesn't go out there to fish, then he's just gonna starve.
Now you do these boot camps where I guess you're teaching people how to fish, right?
Yes.
So what I noticed the boot camps are like 2-3 days. What happens during a boot camp for those few days?
So it's like an entire weekend, and it's basically life training. First, we have a class. Again, very Asian style. There's a lecture. There's a 200-page workbook. There are PowerPoint training charts, but most importantly, like drills, right, where we actually practice. So it's more than just theory. But we do like body language drills, like working on like facial expressions. I don't know if you guys have ever heard like the Asian poker face. Like
Asian poker face?
The Asian poker face.
What is it though?
It's like
poker?
Just we're like this.
Dead face.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to approach a black girl, Latin girl, or white girl. They're not used to how we display ourselves, right? So you really have to express, especially in the Western setting.
Okay, you're right. A lot of black people.
Fake smile.
I mean, I wouldn't say fake so much as more being authentic, like
So
in of yourself, because you're probably happy with your friends. Like before here, we were all like joking and laughing and stuff like that. But when you meet a stranger, what happens is we become inauthentic. We start to filter, especially Asian, the idea of like saving face. It's like, I don't want to do anything that embarrasses me or loses face. So I'm not going to be goofy. I'm not going to joke around like we were doing earlier and tell stupid jokes or anything like that. So, we do the body language stuff, and then we also do like the inner game drills where we work on sort of like emotional awareness, but also how do we manage and regulate our emotions and confidence and manage the anxiety, because anxiety is never going to disappear, right? But we can manage ourselves such that we can get up to the point where we can go up there and say hello to a pretty girl that we want to.
Do you ever get non-Asian clients?
Yes, not as common. I would say about maybe 25% of my clientele
okay, that's
are
pretty high still.
Yeah, but obviously because of what I look like, people come to me because if they say like, if that little Asian dude can do it, then anyone can do it.
And you're kind of famous too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I've
why
done,
people got
you know,
to know,
media,
yeah.
I've taught at like some Ivy League, you know, universities.
Are you saying
so.
that African Americans and Hispanics, they're more honest with themselves compared to like Asians? I mean, it sounds like a little bit like that.
What's interesting, I think, is like there is an oral dating tradition in other, you know, sub-communities, like African American, or the Latino, machismo. So teaching them is relatively easy.
Oh.
I
I
mean,
think
it's pretty
he's
easy.
more saying that it's Western coded,
Western
right?
coded.
Because like, you know, African Americans are pretty much
Uh-huh,
Western.
uh-huh.
And
Right, but even like African American, like their idea, like spitting game and stuff
Sure.
like that, like it is very prominent, right?
Yeah.
But then you have maybe more the Caucasian students where obviously they have like the media and Hollywood that's in their favor, but then you have quite a few that are kind of falling into that cesspool of the manosphere
Yeah.
and red pill and all that.
Is that
BS.
the Andrew Tate stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I find the manosphere to be like very racist, so I avoid it. So.
Andrew Tate.
Yeah, it's like Andrew Tate has said some like anti-Asian racist things.
oh yeah,
So
sure.
the entire thing about the manosphere is like, oh, they want to go back to a certain time where it's like, oh, men were men and women were women, and maybe there's some Asians that follow it. But I'm like, bro, in those times, the pyramid scheme of social hierarchy, Asian men were still at the bottom. Like that manosphere hierarchy does not benefit Asian men.
Yeah.
So
Do you ever turn down clients?
yes, I have. There was one that was like uber religious. And it was just so incredibly, like, oddly religious, where it's like, hey, I only want a virgin, but I want you to teach me how to sleep around so I can lay down back a virgin. I just looked at him and just like, that is
sounds
such a toxic.
I
Like,
just want
no.
virgin. You have like clients who said that. I just want to deal with virgin.
No. He wanted to marry a virgin,
Okay.
but he wanted to be able to like sleep
Around.
around, but only then like marry
So
a
just-
virgin.
That's
To get the ability to seduce a virgin, like what?
Yeah, so it was just like very toxic, and he had a very much like I want to get back at like white men and Asian women by like
Oh, boy.
sleeping with white women. I'm like,
God.
Was
this
he
is
Korean?
toxic. I mean, some sort of Asian.
Was he Canadian? By any
He
chance?
He
Did
felt
live in
going on a
Toronto by any
revenge
chance?
spree or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. Like I said, it was a very kind of toxic thing. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna refund you. Here, take your money, go away.
Okay. No, but the boot camp, so I'm guessing it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yes.
So it sounds like a seminar, and then I'm guessing at night you go to nightclubs, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's that lecture portion, and then we go infield. So there's Friday night, Saturday night, and then on Sunday we go what we call like day game. The
Day
idea of going to everyday settings, parks, malls.
Not
you
just
know.
clothes, just okay.
Yeah,
On
so that
Sunday,
regular
okay.
yeah.
Day game.
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
day part of it.
And that way you get to potentially meet the, you know, whatever future mother of your child, love of your life, or, you know, fun of the night or day, you know, in any setting. You never know, right? Like bars, clubs, or the daytime. I know that there are people that think, oh, I'll never meet my future wife at a club, but that's a very hypocritical judgment call. Like people go to bars and clubs because it's a social atmosphere,
Yeah.
because it's fun. It doesn't say anything about anyone's morality or ethics simply because you go to a bar or she goes to a club. People do that just to
I mean,
enjoy
just 10
life.
years ago, I feel like marrying somebody off a dating site was taboo. And
Now it's like the
just
norm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a norm. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a norm now.
So I think we're all in our 40s here. Is it still?
Rude.
Hey, we look 10 years younger. We have the Asian fountain of youth. We look 10 years younger.
Yeah, but can we still go to like Hollywood nightclubs and pick up girls? Like, aren't we too old? Like, they're not gonna let us in. How is it now?
It's fine. I mean, I would say Hollywood has never really recovered since COVID. I would say it's only like 80%, but it's still Los Angeles, right? So you can still go out to whatever sort of venue, whatever crowd that you're into.
Now your average student is probably not in their 40s. They're probably like 20s, maybe 30s.
20s and 30s typically, yeah.
So if you had students, well, Michael's married, but Ed, Doug, and I, we're not married. So if the three of us were your students, could we have success at those Hollywood clubs too?
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
Absolutely.
these guys
I'm
could,
just
but
kidding.
even me?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, here's the thing. Like, I'm looking around the table, and I'm like the shortest dude here.
Mhm.
Like, I would say not race, but height is actually the highest predicator of what women find attractive. Like, I would, give my left foot to be as 6 foot tall as you. Just that height definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, if you're at a
Right.
rave, you're shooting fish in a barrel.
But what about BMI? I think I'm disadvantaged there.
You know what? I was 201 pounds. I was obese during the height of COVID, and I still had like a girlfriend during that time.
This was when you were famous and all this, right?
Yeah, but like I'm only famous amongst Asians. I'm not famous amongst like.
Well, are you trying to say
Americans.
he's not famous now? What do you
No. I mean, because you were saying that even during pandemic you were gaining weight, but you didn't have trouble hooking up with girls because, and then I'm saying because probably you were famous, you know.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm only famous amongst Asians.
Okay.
I'm not famous amongst any other group of
And
people.
you had like I'm guessing like white girlfriend or non-Asian.
Non-Asian girlfriend, yeah.
Right.
Is that something you like? What if there's a client who's Asian who wants to get with an Asian, I guess, girlfriend or whatever?
I mean, I
Only
applaud
Asian.
that. That's fine, right? There are obviously a lot of positives to that, like cultural, religious, language similarities, but I'm a former aerospace engineer, like literally rocket
Oh,
science.
okay.
So I tend to call it neurodivergence or whatever. I tend to look at in the world in terms of numbers.
Sure.
If you look at the dateable range, if you're like 18 to like 39, single, no kids, and you only look at Asian women, that's less than 1%. It's not even 1% of the population. But if you include black women, Latin women, and white women, you jump from like less than 1% to almost 16% are dateable population.
Okay.
So I had to say to them like, hey, one, if you're not really good at dating, you're gonna have to practice socializing. So don't limit yourself just to
So you're
Asian
saying that
women.
a lot of the reason Asian men are single is because they only focus on Asian women instead of expanding their horizons.
I would definitely say that is an overriding factor.
I see.
Part of that is also like society. Hollywood says that Asian men aren't good enough,
Sure.
or it tells women like don't date Asian guys, blah blah blah.
So it's almost like a self-reinforcing kind of.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
internal factors as well as external factors that affect that.
Yeah.
Have you ever dated an Asian woman who, there are a lot of Asian women who say, oh, I don't date Asian guys. They're like my brothers or they're like my cousins
that's-
or I'm just not into them. So if an Asian guy wants to meet an Asian girl like that, like how can he change her mind?
But why would they?
Yeah.
Why would they?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that is why would you date someone has
already so
internalized
wrong.
racism?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something for them
Did you
to
see a
work
lot
out.
of those girls?
I have definitely run
Asian
into
girls?
a lot of those
Oh,
girls.
you did.
I mean,
Do you
I'm
feel
not-
like there's been a trend of banana-rangism going on?
you have to remind me that term. I've heard the term.
It's
but-
basically like an Asian woman who just dates all white men, but now that she's getting older and less attractive, she's trying to settle down, so she banana-rangs to the
I mean,
Asian
I
guy.
don't know the statistical trend of that. I wouldn't necessarily.
I guess it's
be
just because,
surprised.
in the past decade or so, there's been obviously, I think you mentioned this before the podcast, just like the K-pop kind of like wave, sort of like making Asian men now more desirable. And I've seen kind of like even TikTok videos of like these Asian women being like, oh, before I thought, Asian men were nothing, but now I've seen the light because, BTS showed me or some other garbage.
I
And
mean,
so-
I would maybe say it's a non-zero percentage
Sure.
increase, but like how likely, I'm not entirely too sure. I mean, I know there are like Pew Research studies that have shown there's more intermarriage between Asians, Chinese marrying Korean, Korean marrying Japanese, Japanese marrying Vietnamese. But I don't see like a decrease in like to interracial of like Asian women to white men, and I haven't seen that
I
kind
guess,
of decrease.
yeah. I mean, like this is what I'm observing really like in the younger generation. So maybe they're not even getting married yet. I think we'll probably see maybe some sort of appreciable, I guess, effect on the data maybe in like 10 years. But that's kind of like just what I've been seeing online.
Well, you also have to think
Trend-wise.
is that simply like the silo of your TikTok feed, right? Is there like the Oxford study thing of calling out the white supremacy kind of seeking portion of the Asian American community? I mean, again, what we see on the media is not necessarily a reflection of reality. Like if we go on the K-pop thing, the K-pop thing has definitely enhanced kind of the perception of Asian men, but it's more of an overseas phenomenon. If I go to Europe, if I go to Latin America, like there have been countries I've been in Europe where people will stop to ask me to take pictures
Because you're
or,
an Asian?
yeah, or we look
what
really
countries?
interesting, right?
Would
So
they
now
be-
Euro tours this year, right? You have to sign up for the Euro tour. And like, you know, when you have a cool group of Asian guys that are just rolling deep with women, they're thinking like, oh, these guys must be celebrities and they want to take pictures
But
with
in America,
us.
you say there's.
It's
changing,
It's
right?
there, but it isn't.
It's
It's
Yeah.
not like common by
Oh.
any measure.
I see.
Like
So still
maybe
at a disadvantage, Asian men.
yeah,
Well,
but
yeah,
at
obviously.
least that
That's
archetype now exists. It now exists where previously it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So, you know, you see a lot more like younger Asian guys getting like perms and stuff like that. They have a way to express their masculinity in more ways than what we had when we were growing up, right? So, you know, it's great in that regards. It's just, is it as effective, that look, that aesthetic in America? I would say probably not. But it's better than having like the bowl cut and, you know, looking like your Asian dad kind of aesthetic. Right?
And going back on your Oxford, I mean, I know what the Oxford study is, but can you explain it for the audience, I guess?
So Oxford study is kind of like this meme study, right? Where they looked at like all like the Asian women in Hollywood, who they're being displayed as to dating, so on and so forth. But in the social media like TikTok, it's become a meme. But it's more than just like Asian men commenting Oxford study on like Asian women dating Asian white men. It's more of calling out the dog whistle of white supremacy that exists where these women are dating the most mid-white guys,
Yeah.
right? And people outside the Asian American community are recognizing that this is a pursuit. It's not all Asian American women that outdate,
Sure.
obviously, but it is a definite like sort of vocal percentage that do date because either consciously or unconsciously they do believe white is superior than Asian.
Sure.
So if anyone has ever said I don't date Asian men because, you know, he looks like my brother, like you might be like a white supremacist. And if you've dated like multiple white guys, one of those white guys I would bet money was a secret racist, right? Probably said goop chink or whatnot, you know, on the side, and she just kind of like, oh, you know, was just ignored it, forgave him for it.
Is it like even like is it a comment? Do they even comment on like the fact that a lot of Asian women who date white men, right, or marry white men, have a lot to say about stuff like the anti-blackness of the Asian community? You know, do you notice anything like that in the Oxford study, or?
I would say where anti-blackness comes into the Asian American community, is it really coming from our ajumas? Is it coming from like the 70-year-old grandmothers and aunts that come over from the motherland where their only exposure to other races was what they saw on TV?
Yeah.
Or is it the military and the, you know, law enforcement officers where the FBI have said that has been penetrated by white supremacist groups and are then coming into the Asian American community? Like, we probably know, you know, some family gatherings where the women will say like, oh, don't date like a Southeast Asian or a brown Asian, you know, just date a white guy. Like, that is a form of white supremacy that is being brought in. I mean, yes, obviously, you know, the Asian American community has its issues with that, but I will also say that it's also because some of it is being brought in.
I guess I was more asking like, do people point out like kind of the hypocrisy of that, of like a lot of Asian women who are kind of like, you know, yeah, BLM or all this other like fight white supremacy, and then you see that they end up with a white.
They have like
woman who's kind of
interracism.
like-
That's what you're saying.
Radical in the streets.
Like, you know, obviously for one single person that might not be a terrible thing, or like for an individual, but when you see like so many of them being the forefront of like the Asian American voice, you know, preaching to the rest of the community that they're anti-black, yet they're, you know, married to a white man, isn't there like a sort of cognitive
Inner
dissonance
conflict, right?
that people are noticing?
I mean, now we're getting kind of like outside my lane and the kind of the political.
Politics.
Yeah,
But I
right.
think
My
this is like
territory.
a second generation thing, because I think first generations Asians want to marry, you know, other Asians. I think that's what I hear a lot from the first, you know, immigrant,
Yeah.
first generation immigrant. But this second generation, Doug, you talk a lot about. I just didn't have any idea before, you know, you talked about these
You grew up in Korea,
WMAF
so
issues.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see the flip side of it though? Like some Asian male just want to date with white female?
Yeah, I think there's.
I mean,
definitely
it's
that
there,
exists, sure.
and it seems louder than it is. But again, only like 20% of Asian American men actually out marry. So it's not rare, but it is uncommon.
It's uncommon.
We just notice it more simply because it doesn't happen a lot,
Yeah,
right?
true.
And they're probably more vocal when it happens.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
they are.
I mean, it's simply more noticeable,
Yeah.
for sure.
Now, when it comes to these Asian women who are in relationships with white men, I saw something really disturbing on Reddit the other day. So how common is race play between Asian women and the white men? So there was an Asian woman, she was I guess she's like a therapist or something.
Oh, yeah.
And they were, probably progressive and all that, fight white supremacy and all that. And then there were also pictures of her leaked saying like, I'm a white man's whore. I would love
She was like on-
big white cock, stuff
she
like
was-
that.
Posting stuff on like Pornhub and stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
So she was revealing her fetishes on the.
Well, I don't think those pictures were meant to be released
Public.
in that area,
Okay.
but I guess somebody found her like therapy page or something.
They found her LinkedIn page and they found her comments and then they found her
Yeah, so,
Pornhub
like,
posts.
Is this common? Like, cause I've
mean,
also read the things in certain subreddits where they say they're Asian women and they're like, no, Asian men are not good enough for me. They're a bunch of wimps. This is only for white men, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if these are really Asian women or just pretending to be.
Marks.
Like, is this common?
I mean, I don't know any statistical study about that, but I've heard and seen, there was this one was a couple of years ago that apparently some sort of Asian makeup influencer or something like that who was dating a white millionaire, very mid-looking, right? And she would groom other Asian women for him. They would have like orgies and stuff like that, and they would do race play. And so, like, how common? I mean, if you look at other kind of minority communities, there's definitely race play.
I mean,
in those communities. So
I think Amy Chua was literally grooming people for Justice Kavanaugh, right?
Yeah.
Amy Choi for who?
Including her
the
own daughter.
Tiger Mom,
Yeah,
Yeah, the Tiger
so
Mom.
it's
Choi
just kind of
Lung?
like,
No, wait, that's Amy
Tiger
Choi.
No,
Mom,
Amy Choi,
and
Tiger
the
Mom.
Supreme Court Justice.
but
So
like,
it's
yeah,
kinda
she was
nasty to
grooming
her kids,
women
right?
to be clerks for Justice Kavanaugh,
She was.
including her own daughter.
She's married to a white guy, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side, are there like white girls who would be like, oh, I'm all for Asian dudes, this is like Chinese man land, or
It's gross.
is that out
There
there?
are, right?
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
people.
I get a lot of them sometimes.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, it exists, but again, like the average person that isn't, say, like as famous as Ed here, like, most Asian guys aren't going to encounter that except once in a blue moon. Does it exist? Absolutely. Like, if
Once
you
in a
go
blue
to like a BTS concert, you're probably
You're
gonna
gonna
run
get a lot
into
of-
girls like
There's
that.
a lot of hot-looking girls,
Yeah,
you know. Because
but
I went
if-
to the KCON and there were a lot of good-looking ladies.
Did
there.
any of them hit on you?
What's that?
Did any of them hit on you?
No, I went there as a reporter.
Why did you dress like that?
I mean, it exists, but it isn't particularly common, right?
Do you think because when I see this, I wonder like, are these like famous Asian American women who are like considered leaders or voices of the community who kind of say things about Asian men, negative things, and then are also married to white, it's always white guys, it's not black guys.
You're
or
asking the
whatever.
same question I'm asking.
So are these, like, I wonder, like, I don't want to say their names, but some of these famous Asian women, like, are they into this race playing? Like, because I can see it now, especially what they say about Asian guys and how they're with white guys. And
I think the
When there's
famous
smoke,
Hollywood
there's fire, I
actresses-
guess, right?
Famous Hollywood
I'm talking
Asian
about
actresses.
one writer in particular. I think she's a bad art friend.
Oh, Celeste Ng.
I didn't say anything.
You mean-
Anyway.
Either way, how many people go to your boot camps? Like when you go out to clubs, how many like single guys are there? Because like maybe I'm being a little biased, but it like feels a little weird in my head. Is it just like a line, or do you guys get like a table? Is there just like a line of like 30 dudes?
No, I mean, back in the day when I started out, I think the biggest program I ever run was like 40 to 50 guys.
That's pretty
Nowadays,
50 guys, that's
yeah.
all.
Nowadays, I keep it more boutique style, where it's just more of a handful of guys, like me and my team. I find that it gives as much personal attention,
Sure.
as they can handle. But I think it just goes back to your perception of what a social marketplace is. Bars, clubs, they're meant for people to have fun, to socialize. Like women could stay home and not pay $20 right, to buy a drink, to not get deafened by the music or have to wait in the cold in line.
Right.
Like people will specifically go out to socialize, but obviously they only want to socialize with like cool, authentic, smoother guys as opposed to like the creepy guys, right? And so when you can embody that and exude that, then you aren't just single guys, you're guys out there to have fun, right? And so, instead of viewing it as like, it's weird to go out to socialize, just think of it as like, it's a normal thing to make friends, right? It's a normal thing to make friends wherever you go.
Well, would you say the percentage of people, of your clients, are like there to be, for lack of a better term, like wanting to be a fuckboy versus like wanting a real relationship?
I would say like 90% want a relationship.
Oh,
Like we're talking about Asians. We're not talking about like the pickup artist type of like white dudes that go, right? Where they, want to sleep with like 100 women. Like the vast majority of Asian guys don't want that. These are guys that are either like, maybe had one relationship in their life and it was simply because they happened to luck into it.
Right.
Or just guys that were okay looking, decent job, and they were able to get some girls simply because these were the girls that came to them. But he never had a choice in the matter. He was like, okay, this is the girl that offers herself to me, so I guess I'll date her. But he never had a choice. So the vast majority of Asian guys want to experience the life of some dating and, then be able to choose.
How
Again,
about,
really-
how about you personally? Are you gonna settle down?
at this point, I don't really date so much as foster women until they find their forever husband.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's like I've had long-term relationships.
You're like the good luck Chuck.
Sure, yeah, I guess so. Like I've had 8-year relationship, 4-year relationship, 2-year relationship during COVID. If I support my students that want to have relationships or to get married, and I support them if they don't. Like it is not my judgment call
Sure.
to tell them because I'm not their mother, I'm not their father, I'm not their priest, right? It's up to them to decide. I'm just there to give them the tool set to be successful in whatever avenue that they choose.
Wait, so you don't want to get married personally though?
At this time, no. I don't see it. I mean, if it happens, but I'm not necessarily looking
Planning
for
on
it.
have you ever fell in love?
Yes.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you fell out.
So you're not close to it, but you're not looking for it.
Correct.
Got it.
I've been in like I said, like long-term relationships.
That just didn't work out.
Yeah.
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 Do you get a lot of like incel-y clients, like people who are afraid of women, and then it kind of also like evolved into a hatred of women, but then they want to like, I don't know if like dominate women and date them or.
Well, like I said, the one student that I rejected and just refunded the money definitely came from the kind of toxic background, and I've definitely had students that have sort of flirted with the entire red pill or anything like that. Again, though, you have to remember, like my clientele are typically like Asian, and so with Asians, while some flirt on the outskirts of that, the vast majority do not. They might be sort of aware of it, but we exist in this sort of similar but outside of like the Caucasian manosphere where we experience, yes, difficulties in dating, but it's because of, systemic racism of how the Hollywood media treats us and not necessarily what like the Caucasian manosphere says is like, oh, if only we go back to when men were men, right? And so there are difficulties in dating, but the source is typically different.
Now, there are a lot of Asian guys who, they have trouble dating here, so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll go to like Korea or Asia themselves, go back to the homeland,
Sure.
meet a girl there and then bring her back here. Sometimes there's like language issues because the guy might only speak English and not. What do you think of those kind of relationships? Is that, should they learn their game and all that first before they even try to find a wife in Asia, or?
Stick to the pond here.
I mean, again, I'm not there to dictate, how they're supposed to run their life if that's what makes them happy. But at the same time, typically someone that has to get a mail order bride, so to speak, probably has deeper issues of maybe emotional intelligence, emotional, awareness of why they're having certain difficulties that are outside, of their control. Because there are certain things you can control, right? Like how you present yourself, your fashion, how you speak, and you obviously can't control how the media portrays us, right? But if you aren't working at the basics of improving yourself and how you come off to others and having that confidence and being able to conversate and establish an emotional connection, but also to be romantic and sexual and masculine with her, then, getting a wife overseas, bringing her over, that problem is still going to exist, like regardless of you getting married,
Yeah.
right? And hopefully for the women, it's worth it enough to deal with that, right? But again, you could look at romance as the idea of romance in the modern sense is very different from the old time. Like, the entire idea of like love and stuff like that is much more of a modern invention, right?
Yeah. Do you have any female clients?
I get approached. I mean, I've done like a female workshop. It was for Shan Boudreaux. She's like, mixed African American. She wanted me to teach like her women of color workshop. So I did that, came up with an entire kind of workshop with that, helped them with the idea of like how are they gonna take control of like approaching guys or encouraging guys to approach them. I've had, LGBT, clients as well. Those obviously aren't, it isn't my wheelhouse,
Yeah.
but, if they're willing to
There's
accept
certain
the
principles that are-
limitations, I'm willing to help them out. But again, they have to understand, like, it is not my expertise. I might have some understanding of it,
Well,
but I'm not an
speaking
expert of it.
specifically to that, do you have any insights about like from that experience? Do you have any insights into like the Asian gay community and like kind of like how, they have, I don't know, what kind of differences there are?
What I've heard of just a couple of like gay Asian men that I've helped is they also suffer from kind of like white supremacy
Yes, exactly.
issues,
Yeah.
where they get fetishized by like white guys, but also very likely to be sort of like tossed aside, like and also they are always assumed to be the feminine
The bottom.
partner, right? And they aren't commonly the ones to initiate the approach. So it's like,
Asian gays are kind of more on the introvert side.
yeah, they're expected to be more submissive
Submissive.
and receptive to it,
Yeah.
as opposed to them taking charge of that situation. So
I have a gay Asian buddy,
Buddy?
Vietnamese dude, and he's not a bottom,
Okay.
but his boyfriend is German, and he only goes after white guys, never goes after Asian guys. Says he doesn't like Asian guys. So that kind of thing seems to exist within the gay Asian
Even the
community.
gay.
where-
yeah.
And then I heard there was another Asian gay dude I met through him, who was like from Hong Kong. But then that guy mainly likes Asian dudes. So anyway, there's anti-Asian dudes in the gay community as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, internal racism doesn't discriminate.
So it's internal racism. It's not because some of these women say it's because us Asian men are so
No,
misogynistic.
it's them. They're projecting, 100%.
Yeah,
What percentage of your program is like building up confidence in people versus trying to work with the psychology of how women are? Because I feel like it should be kind of like a universal thing, dating, right? Like if you're confident and you're able to put yourself out there, finding your match should be kind of it, shouldn't it? Isn't that majority of what it is? I mean, maybe you're right, and maybe it's because I'm tall, but like, I feel like I've never really had an issue, but I was also never had a hard time like just being myself,
Well, it's sort of like, if someone has never experienced racism, does that mean racism doesn't exist? Simply because you didn't experience troubles with dating doesn't mean.
No, I'm not saying that it doesn't
Right.
exist. I'm just saying like, how much of it is like confidence building versus like trying to understand what women want or what the other person wants is what I'm saying. Because like, if you're able to just like build up their confidence, wouldn't that help their game like by a lot?
like self-improvement.
Right, yeah.
I would say compared to like others in my particular industry, we definitely do a great more of the self-development of the man, because one of the things you only have control over is what I do.
You do.
I only have control over what I can't
Right.
control other people. There are no Jedi mind tricks, right? So it's about like, what can I do? How can I emotionally self-regulate my anxiety and my confidence? And what do I need to present myself? How to say it, right? And so it is we're much more on the self-development side, but at the same time, you have to give guys practical skill sets, because simply believing in yourself, sort of like, you know, the reader or someone that we were talking about earlier, where he believes that he deserves better, but it isn't met with external reality, right? Simply because you believe you deserve better, but no one treats you like that. There's a discrepancy. That's called delusion. You can have all the confidence in the world, but if people don't treat you in that manner, you're just deluded. You're living in a fantasy world. So your internal confidence has to match the external reality, or like the skill sets. Because also you have to consider, I have entire boot camps where no one speaks English as their first language. Imagine a bunch of fobs going around like, oh, you are beautiful, like, you know, Chinese, like that, right? And so they have to have technical skill sets, because no matter how much they believe in themselves, that foreignness is, let's be real, a major turnoff to American women. So they have to have like practical skill sets to go along with their internal belief system.
But technicality is important too.
Yeah, and that's why I call it like holistic, because we teach like inner game, outer game, verbal game. We're not just like one portion. We try to be well-rounded, because I don't know where the students are coming from, because I've had like Asian American, tall, good looking, you know, rich, even semi-famous, but like didn't believe in themselves.
Right.
Then I've had complete fobs that were like totally believed in themselves, but didn't know how to talk to American
Right.
women.
I can see that one.
Yeah.
I know for sure.
Yeah, and so like I
That's funny.
can't assume. I can't assume. So the idea is to build their foundation,
Yeah.
whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, or verbal.
I want to bring up something. I don't know if you still use this, but I did buy I think it was a book or ebook or something, maybe
Okay,
like 10 years ago.
thank you.
I interviewed JT 13 years
Oh,
ago, by
you
the
did?
way,
Okay.
and then shortly after I bought one
Wait,
of
for
his
Radio Korea or for?
on the radio.
During the KTown.
KTown
night on Saturday.
KTown Tonight. Yeah,
I back in the day I listened to that show.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
he was a fan.
Yeah.
Do you remember the episode?
No, it was he had a female co-host back then. I
Okay.
think.
Yeah,
So.
she went out with.
We're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
circle back to that later.
So in JT's book, or it was something, but I remember one line that resonated with me, and it said, "In order for you to find the woman of your dreams, you have to become the man of her dreams."
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I gotta, you know, look better and dress better and, you know, speak better and all that, smell better and all that, right? I haven't done it yet, but.
Do you still believe that?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't believe you have value, how's anyone gonna believe in you that you have value?
But you have to also have that, not just believe it, but you gotta
Okay.
have that, right? And like,
Yeah. I mean, there are some people that can absolutely fake it till you make it. Let's be honest. There are some guys that are broke, no jobs, like terrible personalities, but they can still get girls.
Comment. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, what they call the F-boys, if you will, right? But again, because my students are Asian American majority, again, the majority of Asian men don't want to be F-boys. Are there quite a few? Sure, but
There's a lot here
I think.
Yeah,
so.
but
in
not-
SoCal
Not
No.
among his.
and Texas, but obviously they wouldn't come to you because they.
I feel like that's more in the kind of like the Asian enclave scene where they are kind of like.
Again, if you
it's
look
more
at
like-
Asian American sexuality studies, we underperform like compared to any group. Like even Asian American women have more sex partners than Asian American men. Like
Wow.
Asian American women are
Yeah.
the studs of our community compared to us. And again, we're the only
Because-
ethnicity where that's true. So maybe like changing times, there are more Asian F boys, but I don't see any statistical evidence of that. It's just maybe like the social media silo that.
But
you
related
win.
to that, would you say like, let's say you do have a white client versus an Asian client, Asian American client, not a flop. What would you say are like the main differences in how you coach like an Asian American client? Let's say all things being equal, like the white client is pretty much similar to the Asian American client. Is there anything like you do to like kind of like change it to cater to the Asian guy because of the discrimination you're talking about, or?
Yeah, like with Asian guys, if they're Asian American and we're not having to deal with like the English
Yeah.
language, it's typically the Asian poker face is universal.
Okay, yeah.
Most Asian guys don't use their body language and their expressiveness enough to match their kind of other American peers, so I see that as a big problem. But then again, the other huge thing is mental, right? Is they weren't, you know, given the opportunity to have play dates or whatever, younger, so they're coming in very inexperienced, or they're coming in afraid, they're coming in with internalized racism, they're coming in with the perceptions of what they see on TV or whatever. And so it is both a lot of like body language, but also like mental. Again, the external reality stuff is relatively easy to fix. You can do that in a weekend. That's what I do. The mental, that takes a much longer time. That's why we have a long.
I think it's because of it's like almost like an immigrant story, because we're immigrants, our family puts a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's immigrant survival.
Especially to Asian males more than their daughters, I think, right? Because we're a male-oriented society, Asians, so they put more emphasis, education to their son rather to their daughters, right?
Yeah, and you'll have
there's
a lot of
pressure,
families that say like their Asian
So that's
sons
why
only marrying Asian women.
Yeah.
Like don't ever date a black woman, don't ever date a white woman, only marry a fellow Chinese or Korean or Vietnamese woman.
Whereas with the women, they encourage white men, so it's just kind of like
Yeah.
they're already out there.
And obviously you have the various history of like war order brides and anti-Mexican nation laws that, legally slanted
Chinese
the marriage
Exclusion Act
rate.
was literally that.
Yeah,
right?
so.
Okay. And we got to start wrapping up now, but I saw on your website you have abcsofattraction.com. You have a Euro tour coming up. It's about a 2-week tour. So what countries are you going to, and what kind of stuff are you going to...
Well, you would have to sign up to our program to go to these countries to know about them. It is what I call the #1 intergame experiential event for Asian men, because we do intergame workshops every day to the point where it's sort of like a deconstruction of their trauma and basically managing that and giving them like an upgrade to the mental operating or emotional system, like to the point where there's a lot of crying involved, right? Like positive ways.
Psychedelics too.
No, because part of that is, if we're to say that, assuming they're Asian American born, right? Dating in America for the average, not anyone genetically gifted, but the average Asian guy, I would call it like hard mode.
Yeah.
You go to Europe, and it's what I call more like normal mode, where Europe, racism exists, of course, but not to the magnitude that America. Okay, it's a whole shift in magnitude of racism. Like I said, in Europe, I remember one of the first cities we went to, this blonde girl, pixie bob cut, literally came up to us and she said, "Are you Filipino? Are you Filipino? Are you Filipino? Are you Like, she didn't want just an Asian guy. She wanted a Filipino guy
She was very
specifically.
specific.
I'm like,
Fetishization, yeah.
but what's interesting is, people say that, but like, no one argues the point if an American girl goes to Italy or France to sleep with an Italian guy or a Spanish
It's
guy.
That's
something
still fetishization, for sure. People don't talk about it as much, definitely.
Right.
What countries is this tour going to be in?
Oh,
that's
you
a
have,
secret.
you have to sign up. You have to sign up.
I know what countries.
You know what I mean?
If it's a secret.
I mean, yeah.
It's
I mean, there's
I'm
there's
gonna
also
guess
certain
Eastern-
countries that
Eastern
are
ones.
really racist there too. So like, I'm assuming.
I
Germany
would say I've been to 30 countries. I've taught in like London. I've taught in like Spain, France, and so like drop me into any major country and give me a couple days and I can figure out the dating scene, right? And any country that has feminism, that's great. Like, because feminism means the women
more outgoing.
more outgoing. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. So,
Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria.
maybe Western, Central. Like I said,
Russia,
I've taught
for sure.
programs
I
all
thought-
over Europe.
I thought Europe discriminate more against Asians than
That's more England.
Some,
is it?
some.
I mean,
I mean, of course.
it's a magnitude difference. You guys have to remember, I grew up in Texas. Like, I experienced like real racism,
Yeah.
fights, and
Big time
getting
racism.
called goof, chink, all of that. And so whether it's in New York, I've experienced racism in New York, Florida, I went to college out there, experienced racism in California. In Europe, again, I've done like 30 countries. Like, we're talking about a magnitude difference, right? If we say like Europe is a 1, America is like 100. Like, it's a magnitude
that different?
difference.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Are you gonna meet neo-Nazis in certain areas? Absolutely.
You met some in Texas?
No, he's
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
Europe.
I've met neo-Nazis everywhere. So they exist, but again, we're talking about a magnitude of difference. Racism exists everywhere, but you're more likely to get jumped
So
by
you're more
neo-Nazi
comfortable
in
with
America.
yourself in Europe. You're more comfortable with yourself.
No, it's more like the women don't judge you by your race,
okay.
or they're less likely to
Because
judge you by
they're
your
not
race.
inundated with American like
Propaganda.
all the time.
Right.
Yeah,
So they're more
probably.
likely to have whatever sort of like perception from China or Korea or Japan, and have either a neutral to a positive reception to an Asian guy. In America, it's at best neutral, sometimes a
Typically
lot negative,
Yeah.
right?
Now, last thing is, there are these guys American guys or Western guys, they go abroad to like, I don't know, Colombia or Philippines or Vietnam.
Passport
I think they're
bros.
called passport bros.
Passport bros.
What do you, these guys tend to be guys who maybe are not having an easy time finding women here, or they complain about how the women here are not traditional, or maybe they go abroad to, I don't know, maybe get practice with women or whatever it is. What do you think of that movement?
Well, I mean, obviously they're experiencing whatever kind of difficulties in dating here in America. They're not able to rectify how the gender roles have changed so rapidly in 10 years. Like I said, like I love feminism. I'm a sex positive feminist. The more feminism, the more it means like women want to hook up with me, right? And so that just means they lack the adaptability of being able to date here, right? So if that's what they choose to go overseas, obviously, if you look there, that's my, client that got married. And so, it is what it is. It is what it is.
How many couples did you marry? Did you have your clients marry, or you don't want to do that?
I mean, I've only officiated
Oh, this
the
one,
one
okay.
wedding, but I have many students that have gotten married.
Okay.
Do you feel like your business though might be a little difficult as you get maybe a little older? Because you can't really. I mean, I guess you could
It
go
looks
out
great,
to
though.
the bars and clubs and.
I mean, for me, this is more harkening back to how I got started, where a Chinese Canadian mother called me up to help her
Yeah,
son
yeah.
who had been harassed by neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
Is going out, meeting women fun? Sure. Traveling, is it fun? Sure. The business, financial side, fun? Sure. But this is more like a call to service to me, to be able to relate to my Asian brothers and help them with their difficulties in, sexualized racism. Because growing up, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have anyone to help me. I didn't have like role models
Yeah.
to help me. And so if I can provide that, like that is what really charges me, like to give that sort of support that, I lacked, a lot of us lacked when we were growing up. So, it's more of a mission than just simply like a job to me.
I see.
You
Right.
must do really well financially. Right?
I do all right.
I'm just guessing, because yeah.
I enjoy life, so.
I mean, he's got to keep the secrets, right? they're definitely profitable if he's keeping them that
Yeah,
secret.
All right, guys. So thank you for tuning in to KTown Social Club this time. We're going to show JT Tran's website here.
Mhm.
We
It's-
can show
what is
his
the website?
abcsofattraction.com. It'll also be in the description, a link to
Oh,
his
we're doing
website,
that now.
abcsofattraction.com.
And you see like that's William, the student whose wedding I
Yeah.
officiated.
Oh, well, it's okay.
And one white guy.
Yeah.
And the,
One
various
guy.
other students.
So over here you can see his programs. What is there? There's a schedule here. So I guess you can learn about the Euro trip and
Boot camp.
all
Is
the
there another dating coach?
different
To be
boot
number two?
camps. So
Many pretenders to the throne.
yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, JT, for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Uh-huh.
I hope maybe one day we should all take his class.
Yeah.
Should we all take his
Awesome.
class? Let's take his boot camp.
Dude, like, I literally had reporters bringing in cameras to do
Yeah,
that.
we're all
so-
single dudes, right?
Yeah,
Juju
but I'm not-
Chang
I'm
came
not
in
really-
with
Juju Chang, yeah, I read that
She
part.
came in.
Juju Chang from ABC, is she from
Nightline,
ABC?
yeah.
You guys want to do it?
No, apparently you do though.
You mean you can?
Yeah,
I'd go as
we
a
fully
reporter.
support you.
No need to shame other men
No,
for
I mean,
seeking
you can.
self-development.
No,
I
I'm,
just
I'm
don't-
not shaming you.
yeah.
I'm just saying if you want to go, it's up to you.
Why don't all three of us go?
Because I have no interest in going.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
What were you about to say?
What were you gonna say?
You're not interested.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks fun, if you want to look at it,
I mean,
Yeah, I
fine.
mean, people want for sure. Just
And
it's
Ed,
not
you're
really
already
my
like
taste.
dating, right?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
How many
I mean,
clients-
I've had students that were married and dating take the boot camp, not specifically because they
Married?
wanted to cheat
Married
or anything
people
like that, but because they literally told their wife, and it was a way for them to develop their confidence. I have a student that's long term where his dad bought him the boot camp, and because he learned about us, and then bought the long term program for his son, because his son is still like a virgin, and so.
Okay.
He's about to graduate college, and so I think it's really great for other Asian guys to support self-development.
So kind of,
Yeah,
it
I'm-
could be like a Tony Robbins thing, right?
Yeah,
Sort of
kinda the
like
Tony
something
Robbins of
motivational,
Asians.
right?
I guess you could always.
Have you ever thought about going into life coaching? Because, like, no offense, but it feels a little not it feels a little weird to me. Like a dad wanting their child to get laid. I know like it happens. I know it happens, but
that's the thing, right? It isn't simply just getting laid. I know we tend to make it very
That's
you know
more like
crass
Western.
in that way, but it is that gateway to emotional intimacy. Like
Sure.
this, like when he did the boot camp, I approached this two girls. One was a tall, attractive blonde. Introduced them, and they're having a great conversation. And then she says, "Would you like to kiss me?" And he panicked, full on panic mode, because he came from a highly religious background. And he thought STDs, and he just ran. And he had to confront that in him. Like, how is he ever going to meet someone to date if he panics at the idea of kissing
maybe
a girl?
she just wasn't the right type for him.
You said
You know what I
religion.
mean?
Yeah.
Because like there are women out there who want to take things slow, you know. So like maybe
Running away though.
yeah, I mean that's a little extreme, but maybe it's because it was like moving a little too fast for him. So maybe it just like wasn't his speed, you know.
Was it just a religious thing? You said he was worried about STD and other
Yeah,
stuff.
but it's like all part and parcel of the trip.
That seems like a lot of, you know, goalpost moving to me.
I think what we have to understand is that, especially with Asians, because so much of the difficulty is surrounding dating, dating is a symptom of the overall problem. It isn't the main problem in and of itself. It's just a symptom of multiple issues, trauma, the way we're raised, culturally, whatever. And that when you can solve the dating, then they can start to address their other systemic issues.
So you can
Right.
find out who you are while
Yeah,
doing this.
but ultimately, like being with someone, that's one of our main purposes in life. Maybe you don't believe in marriage. I know some guys that don't believe in marriage, but maybe you do. But generally, we do want to be with someone. But if you don't have that ability for whatever reason, it's like you're dying without oxygen. So you gotta have to give them oxygen first, and then they can figure out what's wrong with themselves.
It's like a lot of dudes don't know how to make a correct resume, and you're like kind of like showing them how
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah. So like you have to give them the tools to first survive before they can start to self-actualize.
Well, JT, I think you're doing important work for our community.
For Asian
Thank you.
men, yeah.
For Asian dudes who, I know actually, I have a friend of mine who took your course.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Like more like 10, 15 years ago. No, this is someone else.
And did it work for him?
He's married.
Oh, he's married. Oh, okay.
That's all I'll say for now. On the but yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. But thank you, JT, for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This meeting
Yeah,
you again
it
the
was
second
very-
time. We'll
very
meet you again in
interesting
another
topic,
13 years.
right?
Okay.
But yeah, no, actually, maybe if there's more stuff, or if we decide to do a boot camp, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, send in your
Well,
questions.
I mean, probably good for the viewers,
Yeah.
right?
Why
Because
don't
it would be
you go to
fun,
boot
right?
camp?
We do a competition which of us three, or maybe he might get the most because he's married, right? He's got the
Yeah.
most. Anyway.
Why can't he married then do the boot camp? So
He's
apparently
married.
he should do the boot camp.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm already doing a dating show for this show.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're,
we
yeah, you're gonna.
are doing a dating show.
You're the candidate?
Would you like to do
Yeah,
that?
apparently. So I don't want to do like all this dating
Okay.
shit.
Send me the
So
details.
is it ideology?
I've got enough dating stuff already.
Is an ideology a
I don't need
prerequisite?
another.
Okay, so Ed's gonna be on the dating show. Doug's gonna be on
That's
the dating
great.
show.
That's
JT we're gonna let him know about it.
He'll
He
officiate
might
the
be on it
future
as
wedding
well.
of our successful dating.
Yeah. So
Thank you, we're gonna-
okay.
That's
Thank,
right.
thank you all for tuning in to KTown Social Club with JT Tran, the founder of ABCs of Attraction and The Asian Playboy. Go to abcsofattraction.com to learn more about the boot camps or the Euro tour, and change your life. Be happy and all that. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, JT and Ed and Michael and Doug. We'll be back next time with K-Town Social Club. Tune in for the next episode.
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching our video. I hope you liked it. And make sure you guys subscribe to this channel and watch all our other videos. Great news too. Every Monday, we'll be putting out a new weekly video. That's right, we've got educational seminars, street interviews, fun in-field pickup videos, and anything else we can come up with that's fun for you guys to watch. So check back.